what's up everyone, Asla here. So I got this 14-inch M1 MacBook Pro from my work a week ago, and this is my first ever M1 MacBook. Before this, I was using an Intel 16-inch MacBook Pro, and I have done an entire video on whether it's worth getting an Intel MacBook in 2022. You can check that out once you finish watching this video. But obviously, I'm gonna make few comparisons of this M1 Mac to my previous Intel MacBook, and also give you my initial thoughts on switching to this new M1 MacBook Pro. So I got the 14-inch MacBook Pro with M1 Pro inside with 8-core CPU, 16-core GPU, 32 GB unified memory, and 512 GB SSD. So this one is much lighter to carry around. It's around 1.6 kgs. And I usually plug this into my external display at home or at work. So I'm totally okay with having a smaller display compared to my previous 16-inch Intel Mac. The design. So starting with the design, when you look at it from a glance or on most of the videos when I was watching before I got this, I thought it's quite bulky, but in reality it's not. When I compare it to my previous laptop, it's only 0.01 centimeter thicker than my previous laptop. So it's really not that thick, but it's just a design and this boxy shape that makes it seem like it is. On the bottom, there is this MacBook Pro logo engraved into it, which I quite like. So the major difference when you compare with the previous MacBooks is the keyboard. They took off the entire touch bar, and right now it's a full array of function keys, which is really good because no one really could take full advantage of the touch bar. It really didn't come to its full potential. So I think it's the right choice what Apple did there. And the Touch ID on this one is blazing fast compared to my previous MacBook. And the keyboard also now has this black background, which I quite like. Overall, I think the design is really good as well, with larger Apple logo behind and this boxy design. And I think it looks way better than its competition. The display. So the display have had a noticeable upgrade. Comparing it to my previous Mac, there's clearly a difference in vibrance and colors. The colors have more clarity, it's popping out. It features the Liquid Retina XDR display with mini LED technology with peak brightness of up to 1600 nits with a ProMotion of 120 Hz display. ProMotion means depending on what content you're viewing, the refresh rate gets adjusted. So the overall experience is just smooth. So now the display has the notch design on it. I know a lot of people were talking about it when the MacBooks first came out. Clearly, a lot of them were not a fan of the notch. But this is such an Apple thing to do. Apple clearly wanted to keep their notch design across all their devices. So other than that, I don't see why they would bring it here because the notch does not have a Face ID. It's just a webcam inside. On a day-to-day basis, the notch really doesn't affect me, at least. It does not affect how much real estate you have on the screen. And when you go full screen on most of the apps, the notch seems to disappear. So it really isn't that big deal. The webcam also has been upgraded on this to 1080p. Previously on all the MacBooks, it was 720p. So it's good to have. And apparently there is a new speaker system on this. Can't look back, it's what you're gonna do when you realize. My previous 16-inch MacBook Pro was already great on the speaker side, but this one seems to have taken it to the next level. The ports. One of the biggest changes on this M1 MacBook has been that Apple went back and added all the ports. So this has been a great change for me. On the left, we have the MagSafe connector, 2 Thunderbolt ports, and 1 headphone jack. And on the right, we have another Thunderbolt port, HDMI 2.0 and SD card reader, which is just life-changing for me. Now I can directly plug in any SD card directly from my camera to my MacBook. I'm sure this is what the pros actually want, not to having to deal with all these dongles. I have plenty of dongles to plug in variety of different ports and different wires. Now it just got so much easier. Performance. As I mentioned earlier, I have got the M1 Pro chip with 16 core GPU and 32 gigs of RAM. I'm sure you have seen all the Geekbench scores online comparing the M1 lineup chips. For me, the performance has been just insanely good, especially comparing it to my previous Intel Mac. To give you an idea of what I do on a day-to-day basis, I work as a software engineer and I write a lot of code. So I do coding on VS Code, and I also edit occasionally some of my videos on Premiere Pro and my thumbnails on Lightroom. I have not heard any fan noise until now, but it does get hot, but not too hot to a point where you cannot hold it, unlike the Intel Mac. Right now I'm only editing it on iMovies because I have not gotten the time to install all the softwares on this. I need to get the licenses first and then install on this machine, but that's definitely something that I'm going to be testing out on in the future. But I have seen online people rendering 4K footage, 10 plus minutes longer 4K footage within 5-ish minutes on M1 Pro and few seconds faster on M1 Max. I don't even shoot on 4K, so I would say it would hold up pretty well. Battery life. Before I got this, I have seen online how M1 chips are 40% more battery efficient than all the previous MacBooks. I'm not sure I have seen that sort of efficiency from this MacBook. Maybe I might not be the right person to answer that, because most of the times I use external displays both at work and home. So external displays drain your battery. So I keep the MacBook plugged in at all times. But if I were to look at the performance today, I started my day around 8:30-ish. Of course, it was 100% at that time, and I was plugging it in on and off here and there, but not too long. I was using the external displays as well, and right now the charge is around 16%. So I would say from that, it's around 4-ish hours maybe. It's not that great, but it's also not that terrible considering VS Code and Chrome sucks a lot of battery. But this is definitely something that I want to test out in the future. But the best thing about this is the MagSafe port, so that it can charge fast. It can go from 0 to 50% in 30 minutes if you're using a 96 watts power adapter. But I'm using a 67 watts power adapter, so mine is a bit slower. That's something definitely you can keep in mind if you're considering one of these. This might be the first ever Mac that truly deserves the name Pro. I'm actually really glad that Apple went back and added all the ports. The HDMI port can be really handy if you want to do a presentation somewhere. And my most favorite port is the SD card reader, because that's the one that I most often use. And the display on this machine is just stunning. It's such a highly spec'd display, which goes up to 1600 nits of peak brightness, and the 120 Hz ProMotion display just makes the macOS animations way smoother. And the performance might be the deal breaker of all of them. And my spec here comes down to a price of $2,400, which really is not that cheap. Only people who make money from buying one of these machines can justify that sort of price. And for an average user, it's way expensive. So yeah, if you have been using one of these, let me know in the comments below what spec you went with, what size you have gone for, and what do you do for work. Until then, subscribe if you haven't already. If you have been, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you all next week. Cheers.